Well, I think the narrative has definitely changed. And if you look at the defenses in our league and where they finished in national statistics last year, I think we had upwards of 5 teams that were toward the top. And I think it's credit to the players. I think it's credit to the head coaches. It's credit to the coordinators. There's a lot of innovation right now in our league on the defensive side of the ball.
Why is that? There's been this perception that well, and it hasn't really caught up yet. Like it's still not really getting the attention.
Yeah. Well, I think we got to do it over a number of years. I don't think it's going to just automatically change in 1 year. I don't know if it's been a fair argument, to be honest with you, because the Big 12 offenses have been really good, and there's been a lot of great skill players in those same offenses in the Big 12 that have been really good, that scored a bunch of points against Big 12 defenses. They also scored in bowl games, versus other conferences. So I think we have to do it over a number of years. Excuse me. They use it. Yeah, I think they use it. Is it a determining factor? I don't know if that's fair to say, but it's definitely used. Repetitions. I think confidence is earned. Confidence is earned through repetitions. I think the easy thing to say is, hey, we've got to get better at throwing the deep ball. Well, there's so many things that go into that, right? Is you got to protect longer, so your offensive line's got to play better, because those shots down the field, they've got to take longer time, which usually means you got to keep a running back and a tight end. So your running back and your tight end, you got to protect better as well. Your receivers got to win. They got to separate, and then they got to be able to make 50-50 balls. And on top of that, the quarterback's got to be accurate. So I think it's one of the pieces for offense to take the next step is we've got to be more explosive in the passing game. And there's multiple ways you do that. You break tackles, okay? You win in space. The easiest thing, and the thing that the fan recognizes the most, are shots down the field. And so we've got to do that. And as an offensive staff, we've got to call those more too. And I think, and it's through repetitions. Confidence, coach staff gains confidence in guys making those plays, making those throws, and then the quarterback, the receivers, everybody that we just talked about, they gain the confidence through having success in those repetitions. Yeah, we did in the spring. What we did too is we from the workouts that quarterbacks run, we've told them, I said, hey, if you want to get better at this, you got to practice it. And so, which means the receivers, they're going to have to put a little bit more tread on the tires. They're going to have to run a little bit more, which is something they've got to understand, and then the quarterback's got to practice it. And then in spring ball, what we did is we put an emphasis on it. And we really, we hit some in our spring game, and we hit some in our scrimmages, and we're better at it. I'm hopefully when we start practice on the 6th that the guys have worked it in the summer and they're improved. But we've got to continue to work on it. It's not something that's going to change overnight. Yeah, so the first thing is I'm a proponent of it. I mean, we're in a capitalist society, and I think that student athletes, or anybody for that, right, should have the opportunity to earn money, on their name, image, and likeness. So with that, it's a challenge. It's a challenge for administration. It's a challenge for coaches. It's a challenge for players. It's new, and so it's a point of topic. I'm not sure that it's something that will take away from the student athlete experience. I think it's another thing that you manage. I really do. We've worked hard to educate over the last 18 to 24 months. We've had some frank discussions about real life topics, as far as taxes, limited liability corporations, group licensing, things like that here recently. But it's a continual process, and I don't know if anybody knows exactly what it looks like, and we're just trying to navigate it the best we can. We don't necessarily have a policy, and and I spoke to this on the big stage, is what I do is I'm not a medical professional. I speak about my personal experience. I was vaccinated as soon as I could. My wife, the same. The moment West Virginia opened it up to 13-year-olds, my daughter was in line that day. Both my parents, my in-laws. And so those are my personal feelings. I'm not necessarily pushing my personal feelings to our student athletes. They've got to make their own decisions. Now, what we try to do is we try to educate them and bring in medical experts to talk to them about that. We have a high percentage that are vaccinated within our staff. We've got a high percentage within our team, but we're not 100. And we'll continue to educate, but we're not going to push. Well, you've watched us, Kevin. You probably know why we got it. So I think that we've had some issues over the last 2 years of consistently catching the ball, and some of those are down the field. And it goes back to what I was saying. That confidence earned through repetitions, and you only can get better through repetitions. Well, you got limited throws from a quarterback. So now the receivers have an opportunity to work on their own without, between themselves, and they can run routes and catch real, from a timing perspective, the throws are very similar, like it's coming from a live arm. And so I'm excited about it. We'll have it up and running, I think, maybe next week. But I think it's really going to be a benefit, especially when we get into season 2, because it's not going to put the stress on the quarterback's arm. Yeah, I think there's several of them. I think that meetings are really important, but I think sometimes we lose our players in meetings. I think if we lined up our players and asked them, the meetings probably wear on them more than the practices or the walkthroughs, and so we were able to probably minimize our meeting time and maybe make it more productive. We did split practices for the first 2 weeks of fall camp last year. I don't know if we'll do it for 2 weeks, but that's something that we will use during the first week of fall camp, because it gives an opportunity for everybody on our football team to get live reps and to get coached. And so those are some couple things right off the top of my head. So it wasn't as productive against the teams that we're going to have to beat to get where we want to be. I think there's a couple answers for that. Is we didn't have somebody that shared the load with Letty. So I think that's a step for us, is we've got to develop depth at that running back position. We've got to be diligent about using Letty. We want to still continue to get him a high number of touches, but we've got to get some of those in less contact situations where he's still fresh into the fourth quarter. And we've got to be able to make some adjustments within a game that can free him up later in the fourth quarter. Well, yeah. I don't know if it's as simple as that, but I think if you look at two games in particular that we lose, we lose at Oklahoma State and we lose at Texas, and we have an opportunity on several short yardage situations that we don't get, and a couple of those are in the fourth quarter, like you pointed out. And so I think we've got to continue to evolve. Was our running game better? Yes, but we were abysmal year one. You know what I mean? So, we're improved. We went from bad to average. But if we want to be competitive at the top of the league, we got to go from average to good. And how do you do that? Well, you got to be able to run the football when the defense knows that you're going to run the football. I think if you look at the really successful teams are able to run the football in short yardage situations, they're able to run the football in goal line situations, they're able to run out the game in a 4-minute situation. And we haven't been able to do some of those things yet. Yeah. That's probably a question for them, Nick. Honestly, what we do is hey, here's the positives, and here are the potential consequences if you don't get the vaccine. Now, you're still going to have testing. You still open to contact tracing. Thanks, Mike. Still open to contact tracing. You have all these that are effects of if you choose not to get the vaccine. That's all we're trying to do. Does that make sense? Is it the fatigue from it? I don't know. Last year was so unique. It was the fact that I think what the common fan doesn't understand is the biggest wear on the student athlete was the fact they didn't go home. So our guys came back from July 4th, okay, and they did not leave again until the last Oklahoma game was canceled. And that's just a lot of time. And social interaction, seeing your family, all that kind of stuff. That's what wore on them more than anything. Say again? Woo. I don't know if they want to write about that. I think there was so many issues. I don't know if there's ever been a more difficult time to be in a leadership position. You're dealing with social injustice issues, the most political tension during my lifetime. And oh, by the way, we had a pandemic, the only one that everyone sitting here has ever experienced. And so and then there was so many unknowns. As coaches, like I'm not a proponent of we do this because we've always done it, but what you do is you get in rhythms. Well, last year had no rhythm, and so you had to adapt and change all the time. And so when you're constantly making decisions based on limited information, then it wears on you. And you're dealing with the unknown of what the virus does, and what kind of effect it can have on your staff, on your players, on the families of your players, families of your staff. But those are the things that wore on me the most. Well, yeah, I think there's trends, right? And so I think both inside zone, outside zone, gap. I mean, you can pretty much categorize every run scheme in one of those three, right? I think the outside zone, it's not as physical a play on the edge as some other run plays. I think with the way defense is played, very few defenses just play a standard defense anymore. There's more slanting, there's more blitzing, stunts in the outside zone because it develops a little bit slower, gives you an opportunity to get on some of that movement. And so I don't disagree, but I think you're always going to see a place for the inside zone and gap schemes. Well, we weren't very good in 19. Okay, we just weren't very good, and it gave us an opportunity to tie. We didn't always win, but it gave us an opportunity to tie. And then, and that was the only effective play that we had in 19. In 20, we were okay at the outside zone. We were better as an inside zone team, but we were still okay. Now, what we would like to be able to do is be good at all three of those schemes. But I'm a believer in the outside zone. I think it creates some seams. Our running backs like it. I think it fits who we are. And so I'm a believer in the play. We're getting better at coaching it. We've been an inside zone team for most of my career. But as we evolve into more and more of an outside zone team, we're getting better at coaching it and teaching it. And I think our guys have a better grasp of it too. It depends. When people talk about outside zone, there's three different really types. You have the type that really runs sideways. You have types that are really aggressive with 45-degree angles, and then you have outside zone people that are pinning and pulling and doing those type of things. So I think it depends on how you teach it. Honestly, for us, we'd rather have all big bodies, right? I think that you have the ability to cover up people and get movement. So I would tend to think, and this is just me thinking and not putting a whole lot of thought into it, but I would believe that bigger bodies make it easier on the outside zone because you can get some initial push and you can widen those seams that you already have then naturally because the ball hits wider. Yeah. So Alex Gibbs really did a phenomenal job teaching those guys to run. They were athletic. Yeah, no, without question. I agree with you on that. We believe in it. I think so much what you do in the run game is what your running back feels comfortable with and what your offensive line's capable of. And so our running backs like it, especially Letty. He feels comfortable running that. And I feel good about our answers within the schemes with the outside zone. Yeah, I've gotten to know Lance since we competed in the bowl game. My last game at Troy, we played against his Buffalo team. Fortunate enough to win the game, but as we studied them for that 3 weeks, just a lot of respect for what he did at Buffalo, at Wisconsin Whitewater. If you look at how he's won and his percentage, it's unbelievable. And the Buffalo team was hard to play against. Really in all three phases. They did some things defensively that are similar to what we do from a schematic standpoint. They did a really good job offensively getting their best players. They had two elite wideouts. They had the quarterback that was difficult, and they did some things that put pressure on you on that side. And then I thought the thing that they did maybe as good as anybody, and I think their record will show that, is evaluating. They did a tremendous job evaluating, and I have a lot of respect for him and that staff.
I saw it even at the beginning was just hard because of COVID and trying to fight through a quarterback that didn't get a chance to play and defense for that kind of kids come up together. And I think
if you can figure out what year people are right now, let me know. So the returning starter piece it's different. I think the better gauge is really who has the most starters that are 6-year guys returning. That's kind of how I look at it. And I think we only have 3, so we're probably one of the fewest. Now we have a number of starters returning and a number of guys that maybe they didn't start but they played a whole lot. And so, talent level, I will say this from the defense perspective. I was looking at the one of the preseason All Big 12 list, and I was looking at it going, man, so-and-so's a really good player. They're not on here. All right? And especially you start looking at D-line and secondary, there's a lot of elite players on the defensive line and then secondary in our league right now. And so from a overall defense perspective, and this is going to be my 6th year in the league, I don't remember, I'm not saying this is totally accurate, but I don't remember as many elite players on the defensive side of the ball that there is right now. Well, it's going to come down to close games. I mean, that's the thing that's different about this league than any other, is there hasn't been a lot of separation maybe there's more parity, I guess the better way to say it. And to win in this league, you got to win close games. You're going to have to win close games. You may have 6 to 8 close games on your schedule. And so it's difficult. The margin for error in this league is really, really small. Mike? I think Dante and Akeem are really good players, and so I think that between those two guys and then the veterans we have in the secondary, I think Sean Mahone's a really underrated player. He's played at a high level. He hasn't missed tackles. I think he's underappreciated. Alonzo Adai played at a high level last year. Nick Troy Fortune's played a lot of football. And so if you look at our secondary, we've got the older guys that have played a lot. Then we've got a lot of guys that are unproven, but the unproven guys are extremely talented. Like our team speed in the secondary is going to be much higher than it was a year ago. But we've got a short amount of time to get those guys ready to play, and we don't necessarily ease into the schedule either. So, but I think, if I had to point the interior of our D line through Josh Chandler at Mike linebacker to our two safeties, probably kind of up the middle. Well, it gives you an opportunity to play closer. If you look at it, we played great pass defense last year, but we gave up. Our third down percentage was not what we'd like it to be. Well, part of that is because we couldn't play as close to people. So the better you run in the secondary, the closer you can play to people. So, will our pass defense go down? I don't know. That our goal is to be as good as we were or better last year. But I really believe that we have the athletes that our third down percentage, we can get off the field at a higher rate. Yeah, well, it helps. It helps. And here's what I'll say about Jared. He started 13 games here, and through those 13 games, he's 8-5. And we haven't necessarily played well around him all the time. Letty went over 1,000 yards and only played about 9 games and some change because he had an injury. But we've got to get help. We've got to do a better job on the offensive line. We got to do a better job at receiver and tight end, which I think we will. I'm encouraged by what I've seen so far in the spring, and so I think we'll make a steady jump. But I think he'll play at a higher level because he's better individually. But I think more importantly, we're going to be better around him. And yeah, go on. Yeah. Well, here's the thing about our receiver play last year is our good was really good. Our good was really good. The word for that group is just consistency. I think from a talent standpoint, if you look at our top 6 guys, I would put them against anybody in our league, But we've got to be consistent, I think Winston Wright's ready for a breakout year. Sam James will bounce back. Bryce Wheaton is steadily gotten better. I think he'll show. Sean Ryan, and so Isaiah Esdale had a great spring. So I really expect our production to be better, but we've got to be consistent. But going back to Sam James, he showed flashes in both his first 2 years playing. I think he's in a spot now that he's had a tremendous winter, tremendous summer. He was productive in the spring, and so his confidence is at all-time high. He's gained weight, and I expect him to be a more consistent player. Well, I don't think it's fair to say Dave struggled. Gets the job late in the cycle. Within 2 months, he's doesn't get to be around his team. So I don't think it's fair to say that he struggled. They probably didn't have the results they wanted, but I don't think it's fair to say they struggled. They were in some close games. They were hit by more COVID issues than probably anybody in our league. And so, in my opinion, I think for him, year one, I don't know if it's fair to probably talk about it. We've had 2 close games with Baylor, without a question. We had a tremendous game on Thursday night in Waco where we had an opportunity to kind of get over the hump, and we didn't do it. And then we had a double overtime game in front of nobody in Morgantown. So Dave has been a high-level defensive coordinator, one of the smartest individuals in college football, and he'll do a really good job there. You talking about our guys? Yeah. So our receivers, they were pushed into duty in 19, and probably weren't ready, and had some success. but also had some where they were exposed a little bit. And then they missed this huge development period. The spring and the summer, they probably needed that as a position group, them and our offensive line, more than anybody, and they didn't have that. And I don't know if as a group, if they worked as hard as they probably needed to when they weren't in Morgantown during the pandemic. And so they came back. They have talent. There were some highs. There really were. Winston Wright played at an extremely high level against Oklahoma State. Bryce Wheaton made a huge play against Baylor in the first overtime. And Sam James, he made some really big-time plays. But we also had some negative plays. And so I think that Jared Parker is one of the best receiver coaches in the country. Those guys under Mike Joseph had great offseason, our strength conditioning staff. I fully expect them to be a bright spot. I really do. Well, absolutely. I think that most of those backs you listed are getting utilized in the pass game too. I don't have the stats in front of me, but Letty was our leading rusher and our third leading receiver. And so we're trying to continue to figure out how to get him touches in the passing game. And I think that's the way the game played. If you look at the elite level running backs in the NFL, those guys are every down backs now, and they're getting utilized in the pass game really effectively as well. Yeah. He definitely can, Mike. And you saw that a little bit when y'all were able to come watch in the spring. In the spring, our whole deal is we didn't try to get him tackled. He didn't get a single tackle rep, but we wanted him to play in competitive, and so we would line him up at running back when we were in a thud tempo, but then we'd split him out when it was more of a tackle tempo, and he's become more comfortable running routes. He's got great hands. He understands route running. A lot of growth for him in the last 6 months in that realm. So, and he feels more comfortable doing it as well. Well, here's the reason is he got beat up as the year went. Okay, and we had to use him more than we would like to probably as far as running. So the theory is this, all right, simple math. When you hand the ball off to him, the quarterback hands the ball off to him, he's running, so it's 11 on 9, right? All right, so you got two free hitters all the time. And a lot of those hits come from the side. You don't see them. Those are the ones that wear on you. When you're in the passing game, usually you're in a one-on-one situation, and now you see those hits. So we want to try to eliminate some of those blind hits. And I think that'll make him better later in the season and make him better in the fourth quarter, like on the question you asked earlier. Yeah, so we went through a lot of competitions in the spring. I thought it was great from a competitive standpoint. It really grew camaraderie and really stressed the importance of special teams, which is what we wanted out of it. And we won't do those in the fall camp. We'll be more focused on schematics and building our depth chart and those type of things. But it was really beneficial. Just to continue to grow. I really do. I like the team. I like where we're at from a leadership standpoint. I like the makeup. We still have our flaws that we've got to get better at, but I think we're on a progression. You know what I mean? I'm excited about getting into August and working with these guys and getting them into a camp situation. I'm really intrigued by these young. We got some young, talented guys. We've had 2 really good recruiting classes. All right. We've also got some transfers that weren't with us in the spring. So I'm intrigued about how we're all going to mesh it together. And so it's a fun time. Yeah. Well, he's proven. He's a proven winner. He won At Wisconsin Whitewater, extremely high percentage. At Buffalo, and I spoke on this earlier, I thought they did a tremendous job of evaluating at Buffalo. They were really well coached. We played them in a bowl game in 18. I thought they were really well coached in all three phases. And he's going to stabilize that program, and he brought an extremely talented staff with him.